the power. Bryant is in the building. What's up, my buddy? How are you?
Blake, how are you? Lovely evening. Good to see you almost back. I mean, you're at 60%, but 60% of Blake is like 120% of like everyone else. Your energy is where I expected it to be. I love seeing you fight through this like a champion. I'm proud of you, man.
So let me tell you what I feel like. Have you ever seen this movie? It's two guys, okay? They used to fight all the time. They used to hate one another, but they respected one another, okay? And one day, this guy's mentor died, okay? When this guy's mentor died, the guy that he used to fight with became his new mentor, okay? Flew him out to California, started training him, and next thing you know, he was winning all the fights. Well, I do feel like Rocky Balboa in Rocky 3, and you are my Apollo Creed. I got to be honest. Benjamin, don't you go right there right now. Go. My son's trying to pull out my internet. See, there are issues with COVID, though, Carter.
This is crazy. So you're battling this dreaded virus. Your son decides, hey, let's be the most haywire kid of all time during this episode that you're trying to power through it. Look at you being a super dad and also being a super host. I'm proud of you, man. And this is something else. You're really brave. I don't think I could do this. You air your show on Facebook. Facebook is a wild place, right? LSU Facebook is a whole different world of species of human beings, right? Now, that's not, I mean, you have smart viewers on Facebook, but if you ever go into like one of these big Facebook groups, the funniest post of all time in there's always three of them. What time does the game start? Google.com. You don't even have to type in Google.com. You could say, hey, Siri, what time does he? You see like 1,000 of those posts. And I'm like, oh, some really good LSU discourse is happening in here. So
my favorite is I saw about a year ago is when is Jamal Adams coming back? And I was like, so I started reading the comments. They thought he was still on the team.
Oh, really?
Yes, like on this team, Jamal Adams, like 33, like Jamal Adams.
Okay, but look at this. I got to shout out Pierce right here. Okay, I just made the connection. Right, it's just Tiger droppings, basically. Essentially, LSU Facebook. That's great, man. But
we almost had a big boo boo because Ben was about 2 inches away from pulling the internet out, and we would have been in deep manure.
Then I would have had to fly solo. That would have been crazy.
No, I would have texted Pooh Bear, get your ass up in there and talk to Carter. That's what I would have done. Get up in there until I can figure this internet thing out. All right, let's talk some LSU. Carter, I've been out what feels like an eternity. But LSU, right. So Governor John Bel Edwards of the state of Louisiana signed the NIL bill today. Some people are still discrediting this, but my argument is being around that world and not giving too many details. Things like that in the state don't get done without coaches and ADs pushing for it. So which means to tell me that they have a plan of attack. When you saw it pass today, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's obviously good for recruiting. It's also good for the players. Now, I don't know like the ins and outs of everything that was passed today, right? Like, I mean, I'm just not interested on reading every last line of every last, bill because I'm not smart enough to read it. My I don't know about you, Blake. Whenever I'm reading like a document, my mind just is like, God, I'd rather be doing like pretty much everything else on the planet than this. But essentially speaking, this is good, right? Because look, for me, it's better to get out in front of it because it does help the name, image, and likeness narrative for LSU. Because for whatever reason, and Blake, you've been probably the loudest speakerphone on this, megaphone, whatever you want to call it, about LSU being behind on name, image, and likeness. Not really. And also, let me throw this out to everybody. Yes, recruiting has changed. I spoke to a recruiting analytics guy that I trust a lot who does a lot of deep dives on official visit data and how accurate official visit data tells you where a recruit is going to go. I reached out to him and I said, look, what can you tell me about Jaden Rashada and his official visits? He's like, hey, I want to let you know everything's changed as far as name, image, and likeness, as far as like things that he tracks. So, any name, image, and likeness thing that's happening right now, a lot of people are going to lose money. A lot of people aren't going to see ROI on giving under $50,000 to a defensive tackle that never plays, or even if it's $50,000, right? Or $25,000 to a guy who might never play. It's not good, right? Because it's not name, image, or likeness in the spirit of it. So even let's just say theoretically, Blake, LSU was way behind on it. A lot of people don't have this figured it out now. Nobody does because it is still so early in the name, image, and likeness era.
Let me say this. I don't think that we've had enough time to see the ROI. Let me explain. Okay. You mean to tell me that the guy that gave $2 million, hypothetically, to Texas A&M's recruiting class, that the investment for him is not winning a natty? Okay. Investment can be like, it doesn't have to be money to money transaction from the investment to pay off for the guy giving the money, right? So example, I might purchase a building. I might live in this building or this house my entire life. When I die, I might not ever see the money for it, but I paid for it this entire time. It might go down the road to somewhere else or for something else. My whole thing is, though, Carter, is you see things like the Players Lounge. You see car dealerships, attorneys getting involved. Well, last time I checked, attorneys write contracts.
Right.
Okay, and who are you going to trust more? The guy that gave you money when you had none? Or are you going to trust the guy that's wanting to give you the big money now because you're something? So I think that there are some things that this does help. Okay, and look, man, let's just be honest. I will pay money because I'm already paying money to some extent for LSU to win an Natty. Like, I don't. Look, I would. I was going to say I'd go through COVID again, but no, I'd go through COVID again for 19 season, but I might. Right. Carter, I might. But yeah. my thing is I think that this puts. I don't think that the representatives of the state knew specifically what they needed to target for football without Brian Kelly telling them.
Yeah. And look, as LGZ points out, LSU coaches assist players in educating players on name, image, and likeness deals. Right. Not only that, like as name, image, and likeness develops, I think it's going to be very important for the players' inner circle. So not exactly the players themselves. They're 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old kids. It's very important for people in those inner circles to give them good financial literacy, right, on how to use this money. And that's going to be key, right? And I do want to bring this up, okay? This is a player that I found to be very interesting. And I know this is like a little bit of a side topic, but this Darren Lee or Deron Lee, I haven't got the correct pronunciation of his name. So he's this 4-star defensive lineman who someone crystal ball to LSU. And he's going through all his official visits. I found something really fascinating about this kid, Blake. I looked at his Twitter account. Did you see this? This blew my mind. He said, hey, I don't want any name, image, or likeness deals. I'm worried about getting to the NFL to make real money. He tweeted something out like that. And I was like, God, that's the kid I want on my team.
Yeah, and Trey Holly said that, echoed the same exact thing. But I did not see that from him. I got to be honest. I was fighting the demons.
I started doing some research on the kid. Because someone brought up in the live stream, hey, this guy got crystal ball to LSU. And I think Ohio State and a few others are in the running. And he still has some official visits to go through. He just had his LSU official visit. And, as a player, he's really interesting. He plays all the positions on the defensive line, which, Blake, as well as I do, that's really hard to do. Right?
That's Aaron Donald.
Yeah. He plays
if you can do that, it's Aaron Donald.
Yeah, he plays a 0. He plays a 5. He does it all, man. And he's very interesting. And, Ohio State's after him. As you know, Ohio State's defensive line reputation is probably the best in the country right now. So it's going to be hard to beat them out for this guy. But man, if Jamar Cain lands him, it's interesting. And once again, that kid in and of himself is a good player, but I found what he said about name, image, and likeness to be interesting. Now, of course, he's going to be good. He's going to get name, image, and likeness deals. But I think there will be a difference between the players that don't get caught up in name, image, and likeness, and they focus in on what they have to do to be great. And if you do that, more name, image, and likeness will come. And obviously in a big NFL contract, or if you're not good enough to make it in the NFL, CFL contract, you can, take care of your family for a long time playing football if you get those contracts.
Right. I agree. Now let's move on the field and stop talking some NIL stuff. Carter, I gotta be blunt here. Okay. I know that we talk about this because I went back and watched this spring game at nauseum this week while I'm just sitting here doing absolutely nothing. I think LSU offensively has a lot of talent. They have a lot of athletic talent inside at guard with Tremont Shorts and Miles Frazier. But I got to tell you something, man, that worries me just a little bit. Man, we don't have a lot of statistics returning, meaning you just don't have a lot of guys returning. Because, look, you can look at wide receiver, and let's take Kayshon Boutte out for just a minute. There's not any production returning to an elite extent. When you see a team that's just talented offensively and has the talent, but they don't have the numbers to back it or guys that have the experience, what does that normally tell you when you see something like that?
Yeah, so let's talk about the offensive line, all right? So for those that watched our live stream last night, this is going to sound like a thing all over again. But not only was the offensive line very inconsistent when it comes to blocking, LSU's wide receivers didn't block well at all last year. Jack Besh was a really, really good blocker. There were some flashes of excellence from some of the others, but there was a lot of inconsistency with LSU's wide receiver blocking. And that hurt the running game a lot more than what I initially thought, Blake. And the hard thing about looking at wide receiver blocking is that you're not focusing on them as blockers. And oftentimes they're blocking away from the play, but it just wasn't good. And you saw some of that in the spring game as well. So, the next step obviously is getting everyone to block more consistently. And I know this drove you crazy, Blake, when you saw the film. What really frustrated me about LSU's running game is there would be plays where everything was perfectly blocked, but one person misses their assignment. One person gets blown up on the play. And what is going to be fascinating next year, Blake, is LSU had two really good offensive linemen last year. Austin Deculus was really good. You have backed him up on this channel. And Ed Ingram was very good. Now, he had some lows. He had some rough spots. But for the most part, Ed Ingram was really elite, especially in that Texas A&M game at the end of the year.
Agreed.
The other three spots were not great. They were not great. And that's where we're going to have to find answers. Do you trust Will Campbell to start at left tackle? Let me ask you that, Blake. Do you feel comfortable starting him at left tackle?
Do I feel comfortable starting him?
Yeah,
no.
Day one.
No.
You don't want him to start. So you would prefer Cam Wire to start.
No, I wouldn't prefer Cam Wire. I would prefer let me explain. I would rather you have experience there to where if he needed to sit, where Carter, here you're starting him for two reasons. Okay. You're starting him out of necessity and you're starting him because he's extremely talented. Okay. Right. But look, when it's 3rd and 7 and the game's on the line and Will Anderson's across the line from him, no, I don't have faith right now. Yeah. Do I believe that Will Campbell will be an All-American when he leaves LSU? Yes. Do I think he's a first-round pick potential? Yes. Do I think he could be an Andrew Whitworth clone? Yes. He's not ready for Will Anderson. And people laugh at that. Oh, Blake's a homer. No, dog. He's a freshman. But to answer your question, no, I wouldn't want him starting. I would want somebody to be there so he can learn. But if he won the job, that's another thing other than starting him out of necessity.
Yeah, and that's going to be the big thing, right? So I went back and looked at Cam Wire's left tackle season last year, and it I thought it was going to, and I'm just being honest, I like Cam a lot. I thought it was going to be a little bit better than I thought, and it wasn't. And what really hurt him was going up against the better players. So you brought up Will Anderson, and Alabama's got another great edge player, Dallas Turner. If there was a draft of edge players, Will Anderson would go number 1 in the SEC, and I'd probably take Dallas Turner or Ojulari number 2, right?
Mhm.
And Dallas Turner really gave Cam Wire a lot of issues in that game last year. So,
well, and Chris said that Will Anderson plays on the right side or doesn't play or plays on the right tackle, though. But Chris, he moved multiple times against Cincinnati. Carter, you broke the film down.
yeah, and that's the thing. It's not just Will, like Dallas Turner's really good. Like Dallas Turner is really, really special. And he was actually just as good in really big spots. So he had a big sack in the national championship game. He for instance, the final Hail Mary play of the game versus Alabama, Max actually threw a really good Hail Mary. We had a chance on it. It wouldn't have counted because Cam Wire held, or I think face masked Dallas Turner. So, as far as like Will Campbell starting next year, like you said, Blake, it's going to be out of necessity. I don't see another left tackle on the field. And I know there's a lot of people that are, reserved about starting a true freshman left tackle. We saw what happened at the end of the year with Garrett Dellinger at left tackle versus Texas A&M. It was really rough. It wasn't his fault. He kind of just had to do it. And this is what's going to be key as far as like recruiting this position. A big part of offensive line, as with any other position, is recruiting, right? Not only do you have to land players, you got to develop them, right? I'm sure when LSU brought in, like, let's say a Marcus Dumerville, they thought he'd be ready to start year 2 at tackle. He's a really good build for tackle, and he's probably going to play a lot next year. He played quite a bit, in overload sets last year, and he was fine. But I'm not sure if he is a starting left tackle. It's really, really hard to find those guys. And to make a lot of LSU fans feel better, we normally think of Alabama as an offensive line powerhouse. Their offensive line was bad last year. Bryce Young made them look a lot better. And guess what, Blake? They're still bad. They are still bad. And they missed a lot. The Brockermeyer kid's not really doing anything. And Latham's okay. And those were the 2 best tackles coming out of that Dumerville class. So it's not just LSU struggling to try and find who their best offensive line is. It's going to be hard. I mean, I know Georgia's offensive line is really good. I know it hurts you as much as it hurts me that their best offensive lineman's from New Orleans.
Right.
Yeah, and that sucks. But, there's a lot of guys struggling right now to fill holes on the offensive line.
And Marshall says, with all due respect, who on our team is ready for Will Anderson? And, well, let me throw this out there. Austin Deculus didn't give up a sack to him. That 1.5 sacks that Will Anderson had was the one that Max scrambled and he ran Max down and he tripped him up, or he just tripped over a blade of grass knowing Max, and they gave him the sack. And the other one was when they put him on who was the right guard a season ago? Chasen Hines. And if you remember, Chasen Hines got obliterated like me on an Oreo, and then he got sacked. So, look, the reason I say that is because when you have experience at tackle, you know who had the most experience at tackle last year? Georgia. Who won? My point is when I don't want a true freshman starting at left tackle. If he's going to start, there's 4 other positions I would rather him start other than left tackle. Right. I would rather him start at center before he starts at left tackle. And trust me, I played that position for a long time. It's a lot easier going up against and getting help from, because, Carter, here's the thing. Left tackle is the only position historically that 9 times out of 10 you're on an island. If you're at guard, if you're at center, if you're at the right guard or right tackle, especially with a right-handed quarterback, you're going to get some protection help, right? Yeah. Whether it be a chip, whether it be somebody shading over, you're going to get some form of help. So, yes. Now, let me kick it over to you in reference to other positions outside the offensive line. Okay, wide receiver and running back. I understand that the talent's there at wide receiver. I got to be honest. Running back a little bit is starting to scare me in reference to not the talent, but can they put it together? Because there has to, Carter, I feel like there has to be a fine line somewhere where talent versus can they do it?
Yeah.
When you look at that position more, leaning more to the running back, what do you think about that position?
Yeah. So, what's funny, Blake? Yesterday, I went through and looked at every run Armani Goodwin had last year. And then I went back and looked at every run Armani Goodwin had in the spring game. And it's amazing how much improvement he had from some of the runs he had last year to this year, right? And that obviously gets me very excited. He finished his runs a lot stronger than what he did last year. He pushed piles forward versus, good linebackers like Mike Jones. And he's very interesting, right? But, Trey Bradford I like a lot. Still, this is going to be the John Emery show. And John Emery has a really high floor if he's healthy, if he's available. Now, notice floor and ceiling are two different things, right? Blake, there's never been a 4-year running back at LSU that stayed 4 years in the modern era that did not turn out to be successful or did not turn out to play at least 2 years in the NFL. Every single one of them that stayed 4 years or more have at least
Shout out to Terrence McGee, by the way.
Yes, Terrence McGee, right? Now, let me ask you this. Did Terrence McGee have more raw talent than John Emery?
No comment.
Okay. Yeah, I know it's your guy. Okay. But Terrence McGee was a really good player.
But yes, he does.
Yeah. The number one thing Terrence McGee did, though, was he was available. Nicholas Brissett, he was available. Darrell Williams, he was available. And you saw what that did for those three young men, right? Brissett didn't make it in the NFL. Terrence McGee made $600K.
Like 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, he played 3 years on practice squads and made $650K. So that's really good, considering where he was. And then, the most important thing is just being there, right? And if everything stays in order for John Emery and he's just there and he plays, knowing his athletic profile, knowing that he's entering the prime years of his athleticism, he is going to be fine, right? Mm-hmm. It would be the biggest, and I really say this, just looking at data. If John Emery is not decent next year, it would be the most surprising bust I've ever seen, or just non-factor per se. Bust is a strong word, but I still believe in John Emery just simply because if you stay 4 years, you have your head on straight, and you play hard, and you show up, you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. The key, though, is the blocking, like you mentioned a minute ago, in the scheme. And are we going to run counter? What kind of runs are we going to do? So that's going to be the most important thing for the running back position going into next year, and pass protection. John Emery has had some really bad lapses in pass protection in the past. If he gets that fixed, he'll be fine.
This is the biggest thing for the running back position. It has nothing to do with him, really. This is what people don't see versus maybe like what I or you see. Okay, they're running zone blocking schemes, but they're different. Jake Peets wanted the offensive lineman to get side to side and get side push, okay, versus getting more vertical.
Right.
First off, it's the stupidest thing of all time. Versus if you watch now, like in the spring game, hey, big dog, I'm going to give you one, maybe two good steps and a hard push on that one technique, and Big Daddy's going for Mike Jones. Who? Okay, that is how you accomplish a running game and why Brian Kelly is so good.
Right.
John is a one cut back. Okay, we saw it against Alabama. If you give him one cut, he goes up a seam. Watch out, because it could be Reggie Bush-like. He can make some things happen. The production's not there for me, so which worries me. When I don't see something in the SEC, so for example, Carter, let me give an example. Last year, my thing with Alabama is I haven't seen their offensive line. The whole thing that I got hit with all season was 5 stars. 5 stars. Well, shit, dog. They sucked.
They were bad. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, other than Evan Neal wasn't that. Evan Neal was pretty decent.
Right, it was good. Yeah, he's right, good. Okay. But they weren't good overall.
Correct. So, bottom line is, it worries me. I want to get to quarterback, but because we're kind of cutting a little bit short on time.
Yeah.
I'm going to save the quarterback and give you one more.
Yeah, go ahead, man.
This, I know that you watch grades a lot and the analytical stats.
Yeah.
Seven Banks, Mekhi Garner, Bernard Converse, and Jay Ward, 4, and Greg Brooks, graded out as a combination as PFF's best defensive back room in the country. I don't think that they are at the current moment. I still think that they go to Mississippi State at the current moment. Brother, that's a lot of that's a lot of experience. See, now it's different when you go to DB because you've seen them play. Carter, I'm starting to lean that this DB room might be a little bit better than I initially thought.
Yeah, shout out to Roderick. He says, who do you see standing out at DB? So let's bring back, me looking at all these Armani Goodwin clips, okay? One guy that quietly had the best spring game, I'm saying better than Garrett Nussmeier, better than anyone, was Jay Ward, right? So
agreed.
So Jay Ward was a really bad tackler. Now, there were times where he was okay, but you go look at the Ole Miss game and then you look at the Kansas State game, it was unwinnable. He was missing a lot of tackles. All Jay Ward did in the spring game, Blake, was make every single tackle. I don't think he missed one. And here's the funny thing about it is a lot of them were open field tackles. And what's really interesting about that, and this is why people should really respect Jay Ward for doing this, is Brian Kelly's practices were different. They really rarely put people to the ground during the practices.
Yeah, he was showing people out for doing it.
Yeah. So Jay Ward, new defensive back coach, rough year tackling last year, comes out in the spring game and pitches a shutout as the safety who needs to be your most reliable tackler. That was really impressive to me. That lets me know that kid put in a lot of work. And he had a lot of reasons to be sour, right? This was a guy who at the last hour flipped from Kentucky to LSU because of Ed Orgeron and Corey Raymond. Those guys were gone. Instead of pouting, instead of saying, oh my God, I wasn't a good tackler last year, took it to heart, took it to the next level. And that's what you want. Those are guys that you can trust. And what's very interesting is all those names you mentioned are very fascinating players. You also factor in Major Burns. You factor in a lot of these other names. And the one thing is defensive back these last couple of seasons has been by far the most hurt position. So you're going to need more than just 5. You need 7, 8, probably closer to 10 if you also factor in special teams. So like Terrence Welsh, a lot of those guys, they're going to get their opportunity. But I do agree, Blake, I'm feeling a little bit better about the starters at this point.
Carter, the power, Bryant.
Let's go, Blake. Let's go. I'm happy you're back. AYS needs to be on. I'm happy you're doing better. You were dealing with chaos all night, and you provided the people with a great show. Proud of you.
Spaghetti and a meatball. Spaghetti and a meatball.
I'm proud of you, man.
Hey,
good work.
I'll send you a picture. I'm just going to show you my shirt. Okay.
Oh, it's sweat, baby. Let's go.
Dude, I have a little pile of sweat on my floor right here. Okay. Like literally, I'm sweating it all out. It might be Jesus just telling me I needed to do this.
I'd come give you a big hug, but
Oh no, you don't want to do that. I'm not going to say anything because people might think it's a horrible reference. So anyway, thank you, my good friend. We'll talk to you probably